My mother-in-law, Margaret, always presented herself as the most righteous and devout woman in the world. She imposed dozens of strict rules, forcing me to live in her house like a cloistered nun. But one afternoon, when I unexpectedly returned home to grab some documents, I caught her frantically hiding a young man who could have easily been her son in an antique solid mahogany armoire. I immediately approached in silence. I slid the heavy brass latch on the outside, locking it, and pulled out my cell phone to call my father-in-law. I told him to come home right away to clean out his armoire, that it was a matter of the utmost importance. Why did I push the most powerful woman in my husband's family down such an overwhelming path of humiliation and disgrace? The story began 3 years ago when I officially became part of the Preston family. Anyone looking from the outside would have said I was lucky. My father-in-law, Charles, was a retired federal judge, a man who always carried himself with a solemn, severe air, and who valued the family's honor above his own life. My mother-in-law, Margaret, was the president of the local Women's Philanthropic League, always appearing in elegant tweed skirt suits, bright pearl necklaces, and a beatific smile. My husband, William, was a civil engineer. He seemed like a gentle, good man, but in reality he was nothing more than a coward, a big kid who never dared to contradict a single word his mother said. In that sprawling 3-story estate, located in one of the most exclusive gated communities in Greenwich, Connecticut, everything was arranged in an order so perfect it was suffocating. There, Margaret's word was law, and I, a corporate marketing director with a 6-figure monthly salary, a woman who had bought her own luxury car before getting married, was treated by her as little more than a servant, a tool to maintain the facade of a highly principled family. I clearly remember a dinner just 3 days before the incident. The atmosphere at the table was so quiet you could hear the scrape of silverware against the fine china. I had just arrived from a meeting with a client, still wearing my office dress, a hemline below the knee, a very elegant, completely modest boat necklace. However, the moment Margaret saw me, she furrowed her brow. Her sharp gaze scanned me from top to bottom as if she were looking at something utterly filthy. A married woman must keep up appearances. You are going to work not a fashion runway to be wearing such a suggestive and provocative dress. The Preston family is a home of prestige, with a tradition of decency that goes back generations. When you step out into the street, people don't criticize you. They criticize this house for not knowing how to raise its daughter-in-law. Starting tomorrow, throw away all those open-necked and short-sleeved dresses. And do not make me repeat myself. My father-in-law chimed in. Your mother is right. The daughter-in-law of this house must step out into the world looking demure, walk with measure, and speak in a low voice. William, how is it that as her husband you don't know how to control your wife and let her dress so ostentatiously? What will our associates think? The honor of this family cannot be stained by a woman. Yes, I will remember. I'll be more careful, I replied, bowing my head obediently to those empty lectures, just as I had done hundreds of times over the past 3 years. William, sitting next to me, kept his eyes glued to his plate, not uttering a single word in my defense. He maintained a cowardly silence, leaving me at the mercy of his parents' criticism. My patience didn't stem from fear or weakness, but from having grown up in a truly respectable family. My parents always taught me the value of patience to maintain family peace. I used to believe that if I was tolerant, if I took care of everything from the household expenses to family relations and caring for my in-laws with the money I earned through my own hard work someday, they would recognize my value. But I was wrong. Water wears away stone, but human greed and hypocrisy never change. They used cheap morality to tie me down, forcing me to dedicate all my money and energy to them, while they themselves were rotten and dirty to the core. And that rot was finally exposed on a stormy Wednesday afternoon in early autumn. That day, I had a crucial meeting with a foreign investment group to sign a multi-million-dollar contract. Just before the scheduled time, I opened my briefcase and discovered with horror that I had left the folder with the original financial report on the desk in my bedroom. Time was running out and I couldn't ask the housekeeper to look for it as it was a highly confidential document. I had no choice but to drive back home. It was around 2 p.m. The gated community was enveloped in a quiet, muggy atmosphere. Charles had his weekly poker game at the country club and wouldn't be back until dusk. William was at a construction site in the suburbs, and I knew Margaret had given the housekeeper the day off to visit her family. The estate should have been completely empty or with only Margaret resting inside. I unlocked the door with my fingerprint. The beep was almost inaudible. I barely crossed the thick oak threshold when a vague sense of unease settled in my chest. The interior was dead silent, but a strange scent floated in the air. It wasn't the cedar incense Charles usually burned, nor my soft rose perfume. It was the smell of cheap men's cologne, the kind of penetrating alcohol used by flashy, hard-partying frat boys. I narrowed my eyes and leaned over to look at the shoe rack. Right next to Margaret's plush house slippers sat a pair of men's high-top sneakers, cheap knockoffs with soles still stained with red mud. I was 100% sure they didn't belong to William or my father-in-law. They only wore dark leather Oxfords. So whose sneakers were these? Who had entered the house when my mother-in-law was the only one home? I quietly slipped off my heels and walked barefoot across the cool marble floor. Step by step, I made my way toward the stairs leading to the second floor. My heart was pounding in my chest. Curiosity mixed with an undefined dread pushed me to discover the truth. When I reached the second-floor landing where my in-laws' bedroom was located, a series of sounds reached my ears, making my blood run cold. The master bedroom door was slightly ajar. Through that narrow crack, I heard a sweet, fawning voice. It was Margaret's voice. That same voice that was normally shrill and authoritative when lecturing me about the virtues of a good wife now sounded syrupy, clingy, and full of flirtation. It was accompanied by the voice of an unknown man, deep young and with a distinctly mocking tone. They were whispering and laughing in what was supposed to be Charles's most sacred sanctuary. I held my breath, pressed myself against the wall, and slowly peeked through the crack. The scene I saw almost made me vomit. Margaret, the woman who constantly preached to me about modesty and decency, was wearing a sheer red silk nightgown, a garment she probably kept hidden in the very back of her closet. Far from any prying eyes, she had her arms wrapped around the neck of a young man of about 25 or 26. He was shirtless, showing off a dragon tattoo stretching across his chest, and his rough hand was tracing the back of my venerable mother-in-law. The young man smiled smugly. His tone was demanding. "Maggie, you've been neglecting me lately. I've needed cash for a bank payment for days, and you haven't been answering your phone. Are you just planning to use me and throw me away?" Margaret playfully pinched his chest. Her voice was so sickly sweet it turned my stomach. "You little devil, how could I forget about you? It's just that old Charles is spending more time at home lately and my daughter-in-law is very sharp. I have to be careful. But don't worry. Just yesterday I squeezed this month's household expense money out of the girl, and also what Charles gave me for the savings account. I'll transfer $5,000 to you for your things in a bit. Happy. But be a good boy and take care of me properly, all right? $5,000. My ears were ringing. The money I had just given her, extracted from my project bonus under the excuse that she needed to repair the family mausoleum back in her hometown, had actually turned into a slush fund to maintain her boy toy. The money I earned working late into the night my mother-in-law was using to pay a gigolo. Disgust, anger, and resentment surged up my throat. I wanted to kick the door open, storm in, and tear that adulterous couple to pieces. I wanted to scream so the entire neighborhood would know the disgusting truth about the respected president of the Women's Philanthropic League. But the instant my hand touched the doorknob, reason stopped me. No, if I barged in now and caused a scene, she would undoubtedly scream. She would deny everything. With her twisted nature, she'd even be capable of accusing me of bringing that man into the house to frame her. Charles and William would take her side. I had no proof, no recording. They would destroy all the evidence, and in the end, I would be the guilty one, kicked out of the house empty-handed. In the business world, I am a woman who has fought 1,000 battles. I know that to defeat an enemy, you cannot use impulsive anger. You must use a cold mind to set a perfect trap so they fall into it themselves and can never raise their heads again. Just as I was backing away, intending to pull out my phone to record them secretly, something unexpected happened. The phone slipped from my hand and hit the edge of the wall, producing a sharp clack. The sound was slight, but in that silence it echoed like an explosion. Inside the room, the laughter and whispers ceased immediately. "Who's there?" Margaret's alarmed voice rang out, accompanied by the creaking of the bed. I held my breath, my heart hammering. I knew I'd been caught. I couldn't hesitate for another second. I stood up straight, cleared my throat, and purposefully stomped up the top steps, making noise as if I had just arrived from downstairs. "Mom, are you home? I came back for some documents," I yelled, forcing myself to maintain a calm, natural tone. Inside the bedroom, a chaos of sounds erupted, rushed footsteps, the clatter of objects falling, and heavy, terrified breathing. "Shit, it's my daughter-in-law. You get in the armoire. Hurry, if she sees you, we're ruined." Margaret's voice trembled, a hiss loaded with absolute panic. "What armoire? This is too small, lady," the terrified lover whispered. "Get in, don't argue, stay completely still. When she leaves, I'll open it fast." I clearly heard the squeak of the massive, solid mahogany armoire, followed by the thud of its doors shutting. I took a deep breath, pushed the bedroom door open, and walked in. Margaret was standing in the middle of the room. She had hastily thrown on a thick bathrobe that covered her from neck to toe. Her hair was a mess, her face flushed, her forehead beaded with sweat, and her chest was heaving with agitation. Seeing me, she jumped and tried to force a pathetic, tight smile. "Oh, Valerie, didn't you say you had an important meeting this afternoon? Why are you back at this hour?" She stammered, her eyes constantly darting toward the closed mahogany armoire in the corner of the room. I kept a deadpan face, showing absolutely no emotion. I walked calmly past her, heading straight to the desk to grab my folder. "Yeah, I left some papers and had to come back for them. Were you taking a nap? Did I wake you?" I asked, letting my gaze sweep over the unmade bed. "Oh, yes, I was sleeping and you startled me," Margaret said, fanning her face with her hand to hide her nervousness. "Well, if you have your documents, hurry along. Don't be late. Your company's work is very important." She was trying to kick me out as quickly as possible. The sheer ridiculousness of this woman who always paraded herself as virtuous provoked a bitter laugh inside me. I grabbed the folder and turned to leave. Margaret sighed in relief. Her shoulders relaxed for a fraction of a second. But she had no idea that the real show was about to begin. Right as I passed by the gigantic, solid mahogany armoire, my father-in-law's favorite piece of furniture, an antique design with a massive brass latch on the outside, I stopped dead in my tracks. I spun around, abruptly reached out, and with a cold, metallic clack, I slid the heavy bolt, locking both doors from the outside. Margaret's eyes widened to the size of saucers. All color drained from her face. She lunged toward me like a madwoman, screaming hysterically. "Valerie, what are you doing? Why are you locking your father-in-law's armoire?" I turned to look at her, flashing the most innocent, sweet smile possible, but my gaze was as sharp as a razor. "Oh, didn't you hear, Mom? On the Neighborhood Watch app this morning, they said burglaries in our area have skyrocketed. They sneak into houses at midday, hide in closets, and when the owners leave, they take all the money and jewelry. We have so many valuables in this armoire, Mom. I have to lock it to be safe." Besides, I saw the door slightly cracked open. Imagine if a huge rat got in and ruined Charles's custom suits. It would be a tragedy. I deliberately emphasized the word rat, locking eyes with Margaret's pale face. Inside the armoire, I heard a faint rustle. The lover must have been holding his breath to the point of suffocation. "No, there's no need, dear." Margaret waved her hands, frantically trying to undo the latch. "Our gated community is very secure. No thief would dare enter. Besides, I need to get some clothes out later for the Philanthropic League meeting. Open it, please." The moment her hand touched the latch, I stopped it with my own. With a force that made her step back, I pulled my phone from my pocket and dialed a number with absolute resolve. "Mom, don't open it yet," I said in an icy voice. "Charles called me this morning. He told me that this armoire has been having issues with woodworm lately, and one of the interior panels seems loose. He was worried about his keepsake suits getting ruined. He asked me that if I stopped by the house around noon, I should lock the armoire from the outside and call him so he could come personally to inspect and clean it from top to bottom." "What?" Margaret shrieked, her voice cracking. Your father-in-law is coming." Right at that moment, the line connected. I put it on maximum speakerphone. "Hello, Valerie. Charles." "Hi. I'm at the house," I said smoothly. "Valerie, I'm at the country club playing poker. What's going on that you're calling me at this hour?" "Charles, come home immediately. I'm up in the master bedroom. Mom says your mahogany armoire is heavily damaged. She thinks a massive rat or some huge pest got inside and is tearing up your clothes. Mom is desperate. She doesn't know what to do. She told me to call you so you could come clean out the armoire right away, because it's a very serious matter. Come quickly, or all your valuables will be ruined." I pronounced every word with crystal clarity, letting the sound boom through the silent room. Margaret was petrified. Her legs were shaking uncontrollably, unable to articulate a single word. Her face twisted in a grimace of absolute terror, like a condemned prisoner hearing her death sentence. "What? My prized mahogany armoire damaged. What the hell is going on in that house for vermin to get in? All right, I'm heading there right now. I'll be there in 15 minutes. Tell your mother not to touch anything. Beep, beep, beep." The call ended. I smiled slightly and put my phone away. I took a step back, crossed my arms, and watched my honorable mother-in-law completely crumble. "See, Mom, Charles loves you so much. As soon as he heard you were in a bind, he dropped his poker game to come help you clean out the armoire. Well, I have to get to my meeting. You stay right here and wait for Charles to come pull the rat out of the closet." I turned around and walked out of the room with a firm stride. The clicking of my heels echoed proudly across the marble. Behind me in that luxurious bedroom, the air had frozen completely. A storm of honor, reputation, and humiliation was counting down the minutes to sweep away all the falsehood of that family. My game, my revenge, had only just begun. I left that suffocating bedroom, the echo of my heels ringing on the cold marble, but I had absolutely no intention of returning to the office to continue my meeting. Such a spectacular, cataclysmic theatrical performance was about to reach its climax. How could the director, namely me, miss it? I went straight to the garage, started my car, and drove slowly out the main gates, so the security cameras and any nosy neighbors could confirm I had left. But as soon as I rounded the corner of the estate, I parked in a discreet spot, killed the engine, took off my heels, and slipped into a pair of Rothy's flats I always kept in the trunk. In silence, I circled the property around to the back. I unlocked the kitchen door with my key and stealthily crept up the back staircase to the second floor. Right next to my in-laws' master bedroom was a small study. The two rooms were connected by a narrow sunroom. I left the study door slightly ajar and hid behind a heavy velvet curtain, holding my breath. From that position, I could clearly hear every sound coming from the adjacent room. The 1 5-minute wait passed for me in calculated silence, but for Margaret on the other side, those were undoubtedly 15 minutes of hell on earth. I heard the sound of her frantic footsteps pacing back and forth across the hardwood floor, her hyperventilating, her muttered curses, and the muffled thuds against the armoire doors coming from the young lover trapped inside. He was probably suffocating from the tight space and the smell of mothballs in that massive piece of antique furniture. 15 minutes later, the roar of Charles's black Lincoln sedan echoed in the driveway. The screech of the brakes was followed by the hurried slamming of the car door. Charles placed enormous value on the classic furniture in his estate. That mahogany armoire had been custom-made by a renowned cabinet maker worth thousands of dollars. The news that pests were destroying it made him completely lose the composed, statesmanlike demeanor he loved to preach about. Charles's heavy, rushed footsteps thundered up the stairs, getting closer and closer. The bedroom door flew open with a crash. "Where is it? What's wrong with my mahogany armoire? How is it possible that with a maid cleaning every day, rats are nesting in my closet? Do you know how much that piece cost me?" "Charles, you're back. It's nothing. Really, Valerie made a mistake. She definitely saw it wrong. I just checked thoroughly and there is no rat. It must just be the wood creaking from age. Go back to your game. Really, it's just household stuff. I'll handle it." Behind the curtain, a cold smile crept onto my lips. Her lie was too clumsy. Her trembling voice, her ragged breathing. A man as suspicious and authoritative as Charles wouldn't be fooled by such pathetic excuses. "Are you crazy? Valerie is a corporate director. She has a sharp, clear mind. How could she mistake something like that? Don't be ridiculous. Move aside. I'm going to see for myself. Why is it locked with the latch? Where's the key? Give it to me." "Charles, I'm begging you, don't open it. It's a mess inside. My underwear is thrown everywhere. If you open it, it'll be an embarrassment. I'll organize it later and then you can look. Please don't open it." The sound of a struggle became evident. I could imagine Margaret, desperate, clinging to her husband's arm, trying with her meager strength to stop him from approaching the armoire. But the more she tried, the more suspicion grew in Charles's mind. The pride of a patriarchal man would not allow him to be defied by his wife in his own bedroom. "Let go of me. What's in there that you're hiding with such panic? Who cares if it's messy? There's no one else in this house but you and me. Or are you hiding money in there? I'm telling you, move aside before I lose my temper. Really, don't open it. I beg you, Charles, by the years we've been married. Listen to me just this once. Do not open that door." A loud slap tore through the air. Charles must have struck Margaret to get her out of the way. I heard Margaret's body hit the floor, followed by inconsolable crying. I didn't feel the slightest ounce of pity. This punishment was entirely deserved for what she had done to me and to this family. Then came the metallic clack of the brass latch. Charles was opening it. In that instant, time seemed to stand still. I pressed my eyes to the slit in the curtain, my heart pounding, waiting for the ticking time bomb to detonate. Creak. The heavy mahogany doors swung wide open. It was an image Charles would probably never be able to erase from his mind. The tattooed young man, completely naked except for a poorly positioned pair of boxer briefs, sweaty with a face as pale as a ghost, was huddled in the corner of the armoire. The smell of cheap cologne mixed with sour sweat and mothballs flooded the room. He was so terrified his teeth were chattering, his wide, bulging eyes locked onto Charles. A deadly silence took over the room. I could hear the young man's choked breathing and Charles's ragged gasping. A man who had lived his entire life proud of his family's esteemed name, of his exemplary wife who was the president of a charity league, was now witnessing with his own eyes a boy the age of his son, naked, hiding in his wife's closet. That raw, filthy truth was like a sledgehammer directly to his pride, shattering the facade of decency he had spent decades building. What? What is this? Margaret, who the fuck is this guy? Why is he naked in my armoire? Explain this to me. What were you doing in this house? Charles, listen to me, please. It's not what you think. This boy, he's the plumber. He came to fix a pipe in the master bathroom. His clothes got soaked and he took them off. Right then, Valerie suddenly showed up and he was afraid she would misunderstand. That's why he hid in the armoire. I swear to you, Charles, I haven't done anything wrong. A lie so pathetic and stupid it bordered on the absurd. A plumber hiding from the daughter-in-law, those ridiculous excuses only added fuel to the fire of Charles's rage. A tattooed, shirtless frat boy hiding in the homeowner's closet and a wife trembling outside in a sheer red silk nightgown. No further explanations were needed. The fury of a betrayed man erupted. I heard Charles roar like a wounded beast. He lunged forward, grabbed the young man by the hair, and dragged him out of the armoire. The boy, accustomed to an easy life, was completely incapable of defending himself against the sheer madness of a man whose honor had been trampled on. Charles unleashed a rain of punches onto his face and chest. The dull thuds echoed alongside the lover's screams of pain as he rolled on the floor, trying only to cover his head and begging for mercy. At the same time, Margaret threw herself at Charles's feet, crying and screaming, trying to save her young boy toy. That idiotic attempt at protection infuriated Charles even more. With one kick, he shoved her into a corner, grabbed a golf club he kept in the room, and began smashing everything in his path. The sound of shattering glass, splintering wood, and curses filled the air. The luxurious master bedroom, once the symbol of the solemnity and order of the Preston family, had turned into a bloody, humiliating battlefield. The young man, taking advantage of Charles shouting insults at Margaret, grabbed his shirt off the floor and, without even taking the time to put on his shoes, sprinted out of the room like an arrow bolting down the stairs to escape. Charles tried to chase him, but due to his age and the extreme emotional spike, he stumbled, clutched his chest, gasping for air, and collapsed on the edge of the bed. Behind the curtain, I witnessed the entire tragedy with a cold mind and a hardened heart. An immense satisfaction coursed through my veins. My honorable mother-in-law, who always weaponized morality to torment me, was now lying on the floor, disheveled, her clothes in disarray, sobbing at the feet of a husband who despised her. Her mask of decency had been ripped to shreds. They had always prided themselves on their honor, their pristine reputation, and now I, with my own hands, had stripped away that false honor, exposing the rancid, rotten stench emanating from the depths of this supposedly exemplary family. But I knew the play wasn't over because the most cowardly, useless character in the story, my husband, hadn't appeared yet. Silence overtook the devastated room, broken only by Margaret's sobs and Charles's labored breathing. I continued waiting patiently behind the curtain. The phone in my hand had been recording from the very beginning. Every humiliating sound, every insult, every plea had been perfectly captured. About 30 minutes later, the squeal of tires outside the estate broke the neighborhood's calm. I heard hurried footsteps bounding up from the ground floor. William was back. Charles had undoubtedly called him to witness the disgrace of the mother he idolized so much. The bedroom door opened again. Through the curtain, I saw William freeze in the doorway, his eyes wide with horror at the sight of the wrecked room, his father clutching his chest, and his mother curled into a ball in the corner in her sheer red silk nightgown. Charles looked up, his eyes bloodshot, and pointed at Margaret. His voice was a hiss dripping with resentment and humiliation. Look, open your eyes wide and look at the filth your mother has caused. Your oh-so-decent model mother. I come home and find a tattooed punk buck naked stuffed into my armoire. This house is stained because of this whore. At my age, after all my years on the bench, for my own wife to cheat on me right under my nose. Tell me, William, how am I supposed to look anyone in the eye now? William stood there trembling from head to toe. His innate cowardice prevented him from facing the filthy truth right in front of his eyes. Instead of interrogating his mother, instead of clearing up the situation, he chose to cling to the clumsiest lies to evade the humiliating reality that was destroying his family's reputation. Margaret, like a drowning woman finding a piece of driftwood, saw her son and instantly changed her tune. From kneeling and begging her husband, she leaped up, grabbed William by his shirt, and bawling her eyes out, began to perform the role she played best, the framed victim. "William's son, you have to believe me. I was set up. Your wife set me up. It was her. It was Valerie who brought that stranger into the house. I was taking a nap and suddenly she appeared with that tattooed man. I was so terrified I didn't dare scream. She forced him to hide in the armoire and then locked the door from the outside to frame me. She called your father on purpose to accuse me of adultery. Son, your wife is a viper. She wants to destroy this family. She wants to kick me out of the house to take everything." Hearing those vile, brazen accusations, I almost burst out laughing behind the curtain. A 60-year-old woman caught red-handed in a sheer silk nightgown, having stuffed her young lover into her husband's closet, actually had the audacity to blame everything on her daughter-in-law. Her cunning and moral bankruptcy surpassed any imaginable limit. But what disgusted me the most wasn't Margaret's lies, but William's reaction. My husband, the man I had lived with for 3 years. He who knew perfectly well that I was a marketing director so swamped with work I barely had time to eat lunch, let himself be easily convinced by that absurd script. He turned to Charles and his panicked tone transformed into an attempt to cover up and whitewash his mother's guilt. At all costs, he had to protect the fake reputation of the Preston family. William didn't ask his mother about the red silk nightgown. He didn't ask why she'd let a stranger into her bedroom, nor why he was shirtless. He latched onto the excuse his mother had just invented to make me the perfect scapegoat for his family's filth. I clearly heard William talking to his father, his cowardly voice trying to downplay the incident, hoping silence would cover up all the rot. He advised his father not to make a scandal for fear the neighbors would hear, for fear of losing prestige at the country club. He firmly asserted that his mother had been a flawless woman her whole life and could never do something so depraved, and that everything was undoubtedly my fault, the resentful daughter-in-law who, chafing under the strict rules of the family, had hatched a plot for revenge. A knot formed in my throat, not out of sadness, but out of a disgust that reached the very top of my skull. I had thought that, despite how weak William was, despite obeying his mother in everything, he at least retained an ounce of reason, a shred of capacity to distinguish right from wrong. But today, faced with family honor, he was willing to trample his wife, to turn the woman who had bent over backwards for him into a criminal, just to protect his mother's shiny fake facade. Love, respect, marital duty, it was all worthless garbage in this house. They were a pack of starving wolves living off falsehoods and ready to devour anyone who threatened their interests and reputation. At that moment, the phone vibrated in my pocket. My husband's name appeared on the screen. I took a deep breath. I backed away silently, slipped out of the study, crept down the dark service stairs, and left the estate without making a sound. When I reached my car parked down the street, I sat behind the wheel. I rolled the windows up tight and swiped my finger to answer. "Speak. I'm listening," I said in a cold voice, as calm as the surface of a lake in autumn. On the other end, William's voice roared, loaded with extreme rage, but I knew full well that rage was just a disguise to hide the cowardice and humiliation eating him alive inside. "Where are you? Come home right now. You're real smart, aren't you, Valerie? Have you learned to use dirty tricks to bring a stranger into the house and lock him in a closet to accuse my mother of adultery? You want to destroy this family, don't you? Do you think the Preston estate is some flea market where you can do whatever you want? My father is home suffering a heart attack. Come back and get on your knees to beg for their forgiveness." Sitting in the car, staring through the windshield at the imposing Preston estate, a bitter, contemptuous smile formed on my lips. Human shamelessness truly knows no bounds. Not only were they attacking me, but they also wanted me to kneel and apologize for the filthy sin his own mother had committed. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't yell, nor did I waste time defending or explaining myself. For those who deliberately close their eyes to the truth, words are useless. I used the calmest, sharpest tone possible, emphasizing every syllable so it would pierce my cowardly husband's ears. "William, listen to me carefully. First, I am at the office closing a multi-million-dollar contract, a significant portion of which goes to keeping your precious family afloat every month. Second, I don't have the free time to hire gigolos and bring them home for fun like your mother does. Third, if you and your father prefer to believe Margaret's pathetic victim routine, that's on you. Lock yourselves in and console each other. Do not drag me into your family's mountain of trash." I paused, letting the icy silence take over the call, and then delivered the final blow. "Oh, and one more thing. Tell your mother to check if her young lover left anything behind in his frantic escape. Just a friendly tip. Goodbye." Without waiting for his response, I hung up abruptly. I leaned back in the seat, gripping the steering wheel so tightly, my knuckles turned white. In my heart, there wasn't a single drop of warmth left for that rotten family. All the patience, all the sacrifice of the last 3 years had officially turned to ash. The Preston family wanted to use their baseness to corner me. They wanted to blame me to protect Margaret's putrid reputation. Fine. The time had come to show them exactly what I was capable of. The woman they had always looked down upon, the daughter-in-law they thought they could trample at will, would be the one to single-handedly shatter the altar of their fake family morality. I looked at my phone screen where the audio file of more than 30 minutes was saved, every lustful sound, every confession about the thousands of dollars Margaret used to keep her lover. But I knew a simple recording wasn't enough to sink them into the abyss. I needed irrefutable proof. Hard evidence in black and white with clear transfer amounts. The time had come to track the entire flow of money, the suspicious expenses, the luxury hotel bills that Margaret had undoubtedly paid with my money and Charles's. The hunt had just begun, and I wasn't going to let anyone in that family ever lift their heads again. Sitting in the car, I took a deep breath to recover absolute calm. The storm of anger inside me had subsided, making way for cold, razor-sharp logic. The Prestons thought they could force me to yield with brazen accusations. They believed a submissive daughter-in-law terrified of a scandal would swallow her pride and stay quiet. They were wrong. When a woman is pushed to the limit, when her dignity and sacrifice are mercilessly trampled, her resistance is more devastating than any hurricane. The first thing I needed to do was not return home to argue or explain. Against the shameless, words are the most useless weapon. The only thing that could shut their mouths, the only thing that could strip away Margaret's facade of morality in front of Charles and William was evidence. Ironclad, irrefutable evidence in black and white with exact figures down to the last penny. I started the car, but I didn't drive back to the office. I drove straight to a quiet, tucked-away cafe on Greenwich Avenue. I ordered a black coffee, no sugar. The bitter taste sliding down my throat helped clear my mind entirely. I opened my laptop connected to a secure network and began the trace. Margaret always prided herself on being an industrious woman, the one who held the family's financial reins every month. Besides Charles's substantial pension, she demanded a hefty sum from me for household expenses, amounting to $2,000, using the excuse that prices were rising and that she had to buy organic groceries and health supplements for her husband and son. On top of that, every other week she'd invent some pretext to squeeze more money out of me, a trip with the Philanthropic League, a relative's birthday, a donation for the church. I was never stingy with the family. I thought that if I was making good money, taking care of my in-laws was my duty. But the recording from that afternoon had slapped me with reality. Just yesterday, I squeezed this month's household expense money out of the girl. I'll transfer $5,000 to you for your things in a bit. $5,000. That amount had to have been wired. A tattooed gigolo wouldn't bother picking up physical cash. And I knew Margaret's habits very well. She wasn't highly tech-savvy. Whenever she had to do a bank transaction via an app, she asked William for help or went directly to the Chase Bank branch near the house. But lately, I had noticed her secretly using an old iPad that William no longer used. Several times when I walked through the living room, I'd caught her hastily covering the screen when she saw me approaching. I smiled to myself. Margaret, dear mother-in-law, do you think you can fool your daughter-in-law, a marketing expert who has dealt with hundreds of corporate tricks? How are you going to outsmart me with your clumsy attempts at concealment? I picked up my phone and accessed the Smart Home Device Management app. Early in my marriage, to upgrade the estate's security and smart home features, I had personally configured the entire Wi-Fi network and the shared Apple ID for the household devices. William's old iPad was also on that account, and the best thing about the Apple ecosystem is synchronization. I logged into iCloud from my laptop. My fingers flew across the keyboard in a steady, cold rhythm. In less than 10 minutes, all the data from Margaret's iPad appeared before me, the photo gallery, the browsing history, and most importantly, the iMessage and WhatsApp chat histories which she had synced so she could type more comfortably. I opened WhatsApp and searched her contacts for suspicious names. She hadn't saved her lover under Honey or Baby. She was more cunning. She had him saved as nephew Tyler Plummer, a perfect alibi to fool Charles and William if they happened to glance at it. But the messages revealed a sordid, nauseating truth. The conversation spanned the last 6 months. Hundreds of flirty texts, sweet words from Margaret to this young man named Tyler. He constantly complained about being short on cash, about debts, about needing a new motorcycle or the latest smartphone. And every single time Margaret obediently transferred money to him, The screenshots of the successful wire transfers that she sent him via WhatsApp to prove her love were all right there. I saved all the screenshots of those transactions. $500, $1,000, $2,000. And the most recent one right at 2 p.m., that very day after I had left the house, a transfer of $5,000 from Margaret's Chase bank account to an account in the name of Tyler Jenkins. In total, the money Margaret had spent keeping Tyler over the last 6 months amounted to over $35,000. The figure left me stunned. $35,000. The money from my sweat. The money Charles had saved for years and trusted to his wife, all thrown in the trash in exchange for cheap, dirty thrills. But that wasn't enough. The money was only one part. To completely destroy her image as the decent president of a charity league, I needed to prove her physical depravity outside of that estate. Tyler might hide in the closet today, but surely they didn't only meet secretly at home when Charles was out. A hustler like him would demand more luxurious spots. I kept digging through Margaret's email, which she had linked to her Booking.com account to rack up points. Dozens of hotel reservation confirmation emails popped up. They weren't seedy roadside motels. They were 4- and 5-star resorts in Aspen luxury retreats in the Hamptons, trips taken under the guise of spiritual retreats for the league or visits to charity galas, which were actually romantic getaways with her boy toy. I downloaded all the electronic invoices. They clearly stated the name of the person who made the booking, Margaret Preston, number of guests, 2 adults, extra services, spa treatments, in-room wine service. The dates matched perfectly with the days Margaret claimed to be out of town for noble causes. My hands shook slightly as I saved each file, not out of fear but out of growing disgust. A woman who lit candles at church, who preached morality, who instructed her daughter-in-law on how to be a submissive and virtuous wife, was secretly sleeping with a man her son's age, using money handed to her by her daughter-in-law and her husband. Her hypocrisy reached a level unimaginable for a normal person. I organized all the evidence, the audio file from the bedroom, the WhatsApp screenshots, the bank transfer statements, and the hotel invoices. Everything was carefully saved in a password-protected folder on my laptop and backed up to 3 different cloud accounts, so I wouldn't run any risks. When I finished, I closed the laptop and downed the last sip of coffee. The bitter taste lingered on my tongue, but inside I felt a strange sense of relief. The weapons were loaded. The trap was set. Now I just had to wait for the Preston family to act out the rest of the pathetic play they themselves had written. I drove back to the office and continued my afternoon work with the utmost calm and professionalism. No one at the company noticed that their fierce department head had just suffered an earthquake in her marital life. To me, in that moment, my career and my financial independence were the only things that mattered, the most solid shield keeping me from collapsing. Around 6 p.m., my phone rang again. This time it was Charles's number. I let it ring 3 times before answering slowly, keeping a respectful tone of voice but with an invisible coldness. "Hello, Charles." Charles's voice on the other end was hoarse, exhausted, as if he had aged 10 years in a single afternoon. He didn't yell like he had at home, nor did he seem to buy into the evil daughter-in-law script that William and Margaret had invented. Charles was a former federal judge. His sharpness and suspicion wouldn't allow him to be fooled as easily as his weak son. "Valerie, are you still at the office? When are you coming back?" "Yes, Charles. I'm wrapping some things up. I had an important meeting with foreign partners today to close a big contract, so I'll be back late. By the way, when I went back at noon for my papers, I saw Mom looking really frantic, saying a huge rat was destroying your mahogany armoire. I had to lock the latch and call you so all your things wouldn't get ruined. Have you checked the armoire? Is everything okay? Did you catch the rat?" I deliberately emphasized the word rat with a perfectly innocent tone. There was a long silence on the other end. I could hear Charles's resigned sigh. He was fighting an internal battle. The pride of a betrayed man wouldn't let him air his dirty laundry, especially not in front of the daughter-in-law they had always belittled. But the evidence he had seen with his own eyes prevented him from looking the other way. No, there was no rat. The armoire's latch was just jammed. I fixed it. When you finish work, come home and rest. Charles's tone was grave, tinged with helplessness. And about this afternoon, don't give it any thought. Your mother's nerves haven't been good lately. She imagines things. When you get home, we will talk about it quietly among ourselves. Understood. Get some rest. I'll be back tonight. I hung up, a cold smile forming on my lips. Talk about it quietly. The Preston family always used that excuse to cover up their internal rot. Charles was trying to save face to silence this humiliating affair to keep the family name pristine. He didn't want a divorce in his late 60s. He didn't want to be the laughingstock of his peers. And William, my husband, was his accomplice in hiding Margaret's guilt, even stooping so low as to try and blame me. But they forgot one thing: their forgiveness and their cover-up wouldn't make Margaret a better person. It would only feed her greed and depravity. And most importantly, they had no right to decide what I should do in this mud pit. I wasn't going to play the role of the submissive, abused, falsely accused daughter-in-law who comes home to talk it out quietly and accept the humiliation. I would return to that estate, but not to reach an agreement. I would return to witness their panic, to instill absolute terror in Margaret's mind, and to prepare the next counterattack, a fatal blow that would prevent the Preston family from ever raising their heads again. In this war, I made the rules. I didn't return to the estate immediately. After finishing my work at the office at 8 p.m., I stopped at a well-known electronics store. I needed to buy some special equipment. As a woman, I perfectly understood the power of image and sound. Paper evidence like bank statements or hotel bills are powerful weapons in court. But to face off against liars and manipulators who play the victim like the Prestons, I needed live proof that recorded with maximum fidelity every word, every despicable gesture inside their own home. I bought 3 state-of-the-art micro-security cameras, the kind that connect directly to a phone via 4G and record high-definition audio and video even in low light. I thoroughly tested them to ensure they wouldn't emit any beeps or LED lights while active. Around 9:30 p.m., my car slowly pulled through the wrought iron gates of the Preston estate. The garden was silent, lacking the sound of the classical radio station Charles usually listened to in the evenings. The atmosphere inside the house was thick, loaded with a suffocating tension. I walked into the living room and encountered a bleak scene. Charles was sunk into his leather recliner, staring blankly into space. Next to him was an ashtray overflowing with cigarette butts, something he strictly avoided for health reasons before today. William was huddled on the opposite sofa, his head in his hands, looking exhausted and cowardly. There was no sign of Margaret. She was probably hiding in her bedroom, too ashamed to come out. Seeing me enter, William snapped his head up, his eyes burning with anger but mixed with an obvious confusion. He wanted to jump up and berate me like he had on the afternoon phone call, but Charles's imposing, silent presence held him back. "Ah, Valerie, you're back. Sit down. I need to speak with you both." "Yes, Charles. What's wrong? Did you check the armoire? Did the rat damage any of your suits?" I pressed the issue of the rat with a tone so carefree and innocent it made William grind his teeth. I sat in an empty chair, my back straight, my calm demeanor, in total contrast to the unease of the 2 men in front of me. Charles cleared his throat, trying to recover his usual solemn air, but his voice had lost its authority. "What happened this afternoon is already resolved. There was no rat. It was just a misunderstanding. I've already scolded your mother for being so careless with the doors. I know that by returning suddenly you saw an unpleasant scene, and you might have bad thoughts about her. But Valerie, every family has friction. Your mother and I have been together for decades. She has dedicated her life to this house. We cannot throw it all away over a slip-up, over a misunderstanding." I listened in silence. Charles's words were perfectly sugar-coated. He used misunderstanding and slip-up to describe the act of stuffing a young lover into the marital bedroom. He was trying to minimize the incident, to turn a blatant, filthy act of adultery into a minor family issue. He was protecting his facade, his own honor. Not Margaret. "I have already spoken seriously with your mother. She has recognized her mistake and promised to cut off any improper relationship and dedicate herself completely to the family. I have also strictly forbidden her from participating in those philanthropic league meetings. I expect that you, as the sensible daughter-in-law, will be magnanimous and forgive her. I want this matter buried forever in this house. Not a single word of this leaves these walls. Do you understand what I mean?" William chimed in. "Dad is right, Valerie. Don't make a mountain out of a molehill. Mom has already admitted her mistake. What more do you want? As a daughter, if you see your mother making a mistake, you should cover for her, protect the family's honor, not set a trap and lock a closet door to humiliate her in front of Dad. What you did was disrespectful, an attempt to destroy the family's happiness." I turned to look at William. The baseness of this man had no bottom. His father tried to cover it up with moral lectures, and he insisted on blaming me to hide the humiliation of the mother he idolized. I gave a slight smile, a smile that froze the blood of both Charles and William. "William, you say I set a trap for your mother, that I destroyed the family's happiness. Do you even know what you're saying? This afternoon I came back for some documents. I heard a strange noise in the bedroom and locked the armoire because I was afraid of burglars. How was I supposed to know your mother was hiding a naked man inside, or would you have preferred me to open the door, invite him to tea, and serve him alongside your mother, so you'd consider me a respectful daughter-in-law? You shut your mouth, don't you dare speak about my mother like that, Smack. Charles slammed his hand on the table, halting his son's fake outrage. He turned to me, his gaze revealing exhaustion and resignation. Valerie, I know you are hurt, and I know William is impulsive and speaks without thinking. On behalf of your mother and William, I apologize. I promise you that from now on, your mother will no longer be hard on you. I am putting you in charge of managing the household finances from now on. I only ask one thing of you, for the honor of this family, for my reputation. Please keep quiet about this matter. Can you do that? Seeing the submission of the former judge who had always looked down on me, I understood he was in a position of weakness. He was offering me control of the finances, the power Margaret had always been so proud of, in exchange for my silence. For an ordinary woman, this might be a victory. Breaking free from the mother-in-law's oppression, taking control of the house, and keeping a stable marriage. But I was not an ordinary woman. I was a woman betrayed, humiliated, and skillfully accused. I didn't need the power to manage the grocery list in this rotten family. I had my career, my money, my own pride. I wasn't going to sell the truth for a fake peace. But I couldn't refuse immediately. If I stood my ground now, Charles and William would go on high alert. They'd try to destroy evidence or hide assets to face off against me. I needed time to finish weaving my net. I had to play a perfect role, the daughter-in-law subdued by the authority of her father-in-law, the woman who resigns herself for the sake of the family. I lowered my voice and bowed my head, putting on a face of submission and pain. If you say so, Charles, what can I do? As a daughter-in-law, I only wish for our family to be at peace. Regarding today, I will act as if I saw and heard nothing. I promise I will keep it a secret. I just hope Mom and William understand my intentions and don't blame me anymore. Good, very good. I knew you were a sensible girl. William, did you hear? From now on, I forbid you from raising your voice at your wife and your mother is to stop making things difficult for Valerie. This family needs to start living properly. I nodded obediently and asked permission to retire to my room, claiming exhaustion. William followed me, still angry, but not daring to say another word. That night, using the excuse of working late, he grabbed a pillow and a blanket and went to sleep in his study. I felt relieved not to have to share a bed with a coward who made me nauseous. The next morning, taking advantage of the fact that William had left for work early and that Charles and Margaret were still in their room, Margaret probably still didn't dare come out of shame. I set my camera plan into motion. I skillfully installed the 3 microcameras in 3 key locations, one hidden in an orchid pot in the living room, with an angle covering the entire sofa area and the entryway, another in the napkin dispenser in the kitchen, and the last and most important one tucked into a discreet corner of the bookshelf in Charles's study, where Margaret used to sneak in to steal money from her husband. All the devices were connected and functioning perfectly with my phone. From now on, every lie, every conspiracy, every despicable calculation of the Preston family would be broadcast live to my phone screen. They thought they had silenced me with a backdoor deal. They thought I'd become a submissive puppet. They were wrong. The pantomime was over. From this moment on, I would be the one controlling all the cameras of the show, and I was impatient to see how, without my presence, this honorable family would devour each other to hide their own garbage. In the days following that fake armistice, the Preston estate sank into an atmosphere of sepulchral silence. It wasn't peace. It was the silence of a tomb trying to hide its stench. Margaret seemed to have locked herself away. She no longer got dressed up to go to her charity meetings. She didn't shout orders at the housekeeper. And above all, she avoided my gaze. Whenever I came back from work, she silently cleared the plates, barely ate, and quickly retreated to her bedroom. Charles maintained a serious and distant demeanor. He controlled the finances with an iron fist, completely cutting off the slush fund Margaret used to dip into. William tried to act normal, but shame and a sense of guilt, not for doing wrong, but over his family's humiliation, made him taciturn and quiet. But I knew this apparent calm wouldn't last long. A bloodsucker used to draining veins like Tyler wouldn't let go of a goldmine like Margaret so easily, especially now that he held the most lethal weapon, the honor of a former federal judge's family. Just as I expected, only 5 days later, the new storm broke. It was Friday afternoon. I was in my office reviewing the marketing plan for the 4th quarter when my phone buzzed with an alert from the security camera app. The motion and sound detector had been triggered. I quickly put on my AirPods, opened the app, and selected the living room camera. On the screen, Margaret was curled up on the sofa, her face pale, her trembling hands gripping her cell phone. She was crying. Her muffled, panicked sobs could be heard with total clarity. The speakerphone was on, and the voice coming from the other end was none other than Tyler's the tattooed lover from the armoire. His tone was no longer sweet or pleading. It was cold, mocking, carrying the threatening air of a professional blackmailer. "Little Maggie, how long do you plan to avoid me? You block one number, I call from another. You block me on WhatsApp and I'll show up at your house. Did you think that just because your old man cracked a couple of my ribs the other day you'd be able to wash your hands and forget about me? The old bastard broke 2 of my ribs. How do you plan to compensate me for that, Tyler? Please, leave me alone. My husband found out everything. He's forbidden me from leaving the house. He took my cards, my cash. Right now, I don't have a single cent. Where do you expect me to get money for you? Don't call me anymore. If he finds out, he'll kill me." Sitting in front of the screen, I smiled with disdain. Margaret's pleas sounded pathetic. A woman accustomed to luxury and cheap romantic games now begging the very man she had bought with cash. Karma was arriving sooner than she thought. "You don't have money," Tyler's voice was pure sarcasm. "You live in a multi-million-dollar estate. You're the wife of a big shot and your daughter-in-law is a corporate director. And you're telling me you don't have money? Are you laughing at me? Listen to me very carefully, Margaret. I don't give a damn where you get the cash. Sell your jewelry, steal from your daughter-in-law, whatever it takes. You have until the day after tomorrow at 5 p.m. to get $15,000 in cash and wire it to my account. Consider it the price of my silence." $15,000? Are you insane? Where am I going to get that kind of money? Don't push me to the edge. To the edge? You haven't even seen the edge yet. Tyler laughed cruelly, his words cutting like knives. "Did you know that over these last 6 months, every time we had fun in those hotel rooms, I was very careful to record everything, and those texts where you provoked me, the spicy pictures you sent me, I have it all backed up to the cloud. If you don't behave and cough up the cash, I swear I'll send every video and photo to your old man, to your little engineer son, and to your corporate director daughter-in-law. And most importantly, I'll send it straight to the headquarters of that Women's Philanthropic League where you're president. We'll see how much the Preston family honor is worth then." Hearing this, Margaret collapsed completely. The phone slipped from her hands. She slid off the sofa onto the marble floor, covered her head with her hands, and let out a scream of desperation. "Oh my God, what an idiot I've been. I'm ruined. He's blackmailing me. He wants to kill me. Charles, just kill me yourself, please." The shame I turned off the phone screen, took out my AirPods, and leaned back in my office chair. My heart beat with an icy calm. Tyler was undoubtedly a brilliant pawn that fate had gifted me in this game. Not only was he bleeding Margaret dry economically, but he was also draining every last drop of reason and dignity from that family. $15,000. Not an astronomical figure for the Preston estate, but unreachable for a woman under her husband's strict financial lockdown. What would she do to get $15,000 in 2 days? Ask her friends for a loan? Impossible. A proud woman like her would never admit to needing money for such a shady reason. Ask Charles, even less likely. Charles would rather see her dead than give her a single cent to pay off the lover she cheated on him with. Sell her jewelry. Most were gifts from Charles. He'd notice instantly. She only had one option left, the most vile, dirty option that desperate people resort to stealing. And the easiest target in that house, the only place with a large amount of liquid cash she could imagine, was me. Or more specifically, the joint savings account William and I shared. I slowly twirled the pen between my fingers. The game had entered a new phase, crueler, dirtier, and I knew Margaret's next target would be none other than her beloved son William. She would use every trick, every crocodile tear to force him to steal my money to silence her lover. I let out a bitter laugh. We'll see if her sacred motherly love overcomes reason, or if William's cowardice digs the grave of this rotten marriage with his own hands. I'll prepare a very solid cage waiting for them to stick their own heads inside. Just as I had foreseen, the panic over the blackmail turned Margaret into a cornered beast ready to bite anything to save the shreds of her honor. And her target, of course, was William, the weak son who always used the word respect as an excuse for his cowardice. After hearing the recording of Tyler's blackmail through the security camera, I knew Margaret would act fast. On Saturday afternoon, I told William I had to meet an important client in the suburbs and would be back late. Charles had a Veterans Association meeting. From the morning onward, the grand estate once again became the exclusive stage for the mother and son drama. Around 3 p.m., I received a notification from the hidden camera in Charles's study. I was at a cafe not far from the house. With total calm, I opened my laptop, put on my AirPods, and started watching. On the screen, Margaret was dragging William into Charles's study and carefully shutting the door. Her face was pale, her hair a mess, and her eyes swollen from crying so much. As soon as she walked in, she collapsed into a chair, covering her face and sobbing. A calculated melodramatic performance designed to pluck her son's heartstrings. William, alarmed, rushed to help her, his face reflecting a mix of concern and annoyance. "Mom, what's wrong? Did Dad yell at you again, or did Valerie disrespect you again? Calm down and tell me." "William, son, I'm ruined. I can't take it anymore. That boy Tyler, the one from the other day, he called me. He's threatening me, son. He says if I don't give him $15,000, he'll post all my intimate photos and videos on the internet. He'll send them to the Philanthropic League. To your father, he's blackmailing me. He wants to destroy me." William stood frozen. His mother's confession was like a bucket of ice water. The room sank into a silence broken only by Margaret's sobs. The dirty truth that he had always tried to avoid by inventing excuses to blame me was now pouring from his own mother's mouth. "Mom, what are you saying? Intimate photos, videos. Mom, did you really do those disgusting things with him? How could you sink so low? Doesn't Dad treat you well?" Valerie was right. "You've disgraced this family." William took a step back. His tone shifted from concern to anger and disappointment. He put his hands to his head as if he couldn't accept that his mother, his model of righteousness, was such a depraved woman. But Margaret was a consummate actress. Seeing her son's reaction, she changed tactics. She switched from inconsolable victim to emotional blackmailer. She lunged forward, grabbed William by the legs, and cried even harder. "I made a mistake. I know. I've offended your father and this family, but William, I am your mother. I carried you in my womb. I raised you. Are you going to sit by and do nothing while that bastard destroys my honor and forces me to? Kill myself, son. If this comes to light, your father will die. Of a heart attack, our family will be broken, relatives and neighbors will spit in our faces. You're a respected engineer. If this gets out, how are you going to look anyone in the eye?" Margaret's words hit the bullseye pride and the family facade. More than anything, William feared what people would say. He preferred to live in a perfumed dumpster rather than have to clean it up in front of everyone. "But where do I get $15,000? Dad took away your access to the accounts, and I haven't been paid for this month yet. How am I supposed to get that much money in a day or two?" At that moment, Margaret revealed her true objective. She looked up at William, her eyes gleaming with cunning. Her voice was now firm and venomous. "Yes, you do have it, William. The joint savings account you and your wife have. Valerie dumps a fortune in there every month. I know there has to be more than $100,000 in that account. You are her husband. You have the right to withdraw money. All you have to do is go to the bank with your driver's license and withdraw $15,000 to give to me. As soon as I fix this, I'll find a way to pay you back." "Okay, son." Sitting in the cafe, I squeezed my cup so hard my knuckles turned white. The joint savings account was the money we had agreed to save to have a child for our baby's future. More than 80% of that money had been contributed by me from my bonuses. And my dear mother-in-law had the audacity to incite her son to steal that sacred money to pay off the gigolo blackmailing her. Her baseness exceeded all human limits. William hesitated. He knew it was my money. He knew that if I found out, the consequences would be terrible. "I can't, Mom. That money is for the baby. And Valerie has the checkbook and the account details. How am I going to take it out? Besides, if she finds out I took the money to pay your lover's debts, she'll cause a huge scene. She'll report me. You know how she is. For God's sake, William, are you more afraid of your wife than seeing your mother dead? The checkbook is in the safe in your bedroom. I know the passcode. I'm going up there right now. I'll open it and give it to you. You go to the bank. Tell them you need an emergency cashier's check with your ID. So what if she causes a scene? The money is a marital asset. No law forbids a husband from taking money out of a joint account. At worst, you'll have an argument. But if that video comes to light, this family will be truly finished. I'm begging you, son. Save me." I closed my eyes. Everything was too clear. A blatant, sophisticated robbery organized by the people who claimed to be my family. William remained silent for a long time. In his mind, undoubtedly, a battle raged between his last shred of conscience and his selfish cowardice. And in the end, his weak nature, which always put the Preston family's interests ahead of his wife's, won. "Fine, Mom. Go get the checkbook. I'll go to the bank to get the cashier's check. But this is the last time I am pulling your chestnuts out of the fire. If there's a next time you're on your own, I closed my laptop and took out my AirPods. The pain and anger from the betrayal had vanished. My heart was completely cold, as still as a frozen lake. William, do you think you can steal my money so easily to silence your mother's lover? Do you think I'm an idiot your family can squeeze whenever they please? I smiled with disdain, the smile of a hunter whose prey has completely fallen into the most sophisticated trap. I immediately picked up my phone and called Mr. Caldwell, a brilliant attorney and a close friend of my father's. Mr. Caldwell, it's Valerie. I need you to draft a lawsuit and contact the bank branch. I need to request an emergency asset freeze. Yes, they've just put their hands in the cookie jar. The game of truth and punishment was about to reach its boiling point. Whoever dared to touch my assets with their filthy hands would pay the price by losing everything. I would shatter the Preston family's farce with my own hands and expose it to the sunlight. The security camera feed was broadcasting live as William and Margaret stealthily opened the safe in my bedroom. They acted with the speed and skill of professional thieves, then hurried out. Sitting in the cafe, I downed the last sip of water, feeling a chill run through my veins. The pain of betrayal was gone, giving way to razor-sharp logic and a perfect counterattack plan taking shape. I didn't show the slightest panic. Since I discovered the true face of this family, I knew this day would come. Keeping the checkbook and account info in the safe was just part of the trap. I knew Margaret had a habit of snooping through my things and had spied on the safe's passcode a long time ago. I left the checkbook there as bait, waiting for the greedy, desperate beast to take it. Without a second of hesitation, I got up, paid, and headed to my car. My destination was not the bank to stop William, but the office of attorney, Mr. Caldwell. Mr. Caldwell's office was modest, located on a quiet street, but his reputation in the legal world was impeccable. He was a man in his 60s, serene, astute, and a firm defender of the rule of law. He was an old friend of my father's and had always treated me like a niece. I walked into his office with a serious expression. "Valerie, please have a seat. What's happened that you're calling me with such urgency?" he asked, pointing to the chair opposite him with a look of concern. "Mr. Caldwell, I need your help. It concerns my entire estate and my marriage." I got straight to the point. I connected my laptop to the large monitor in his office and showed him one by one and with total clarity the videos, the audio recordings, and the screenshots of the wire transfers. From the incident with the lover in the house to Tyler's blackmail and finally the scene of mother and son conspiring to steal the checkbook, Mr. Caldwell listened in silence, his brow furrowed. He had seen many complicated family cases, but the shamelessness and rot of the Preston family left him stunned. "How do you want to proceed, Valerie?" he asked when I finished, his tone shifting to that of a professional. "I want a divorce, Mr. Caldwell, and I want them to pay for what they've done. I will not allow them to keep a single cent of my hard work," I stated, my gaze determined. "It's the right decision. With this evidence, you have every advantage to prove that the fault lies entirely with your husband, which will give you a massive upper hand in the division of assets." He nodded, starting to analyze the situation. "However, the most urgent thing is to protect the money in the joint savings account. William already has the checkbook and is on his way to the bank. If we don't stop him recovering, that money will be very difficult." "I've already accounted for that, Mr. Caldwell." I smiled confidently. "I have a transaction limit and two-factor authentication set up on that account. Any cash or cashier's check withdrawal over $1,000 requires an OTP code that is sent to my personal cell phone. William has the checkbook and his ID, but without my code, he won't be able to withdraw the money." Mr. Caldwell burst out laughing, his eyes shining with admiration. "You are truly your father's daughter. Very cautious indeed. But it's not enough. We need more solid legal measures to block any attempt to divert the assets." He immediately gave instructions to his team to prepare a series of legal documents. First, a request for an emergency injunction to freeze the joint account, as well as William and Margaret's personal accounts, based on the evidence of Margaret's transfers to her lover, a clear violation of marital assets, William's attempted theft. The request had a solid legal basis, and the court would resolve it quickly. Second, he sent a paralegal with me to a notary public to officially notarize all the videos, audio files, and screenshots. This notarized affidavit would be irrefutable proof of the validity of the electronic documents in court. Third, we prepared the divorce petition specifying the division of assets and a claim for damages due to a breach of fiduciary duty and William's attempted embezzlement. While the legal paperwork was moving forward, my phone kept buzzing with messages from the bank. "Your OTP code for the withdrawal of $15,000 is..." William was desperate at the bank counter trying to get the money out, but without my phone, his efforts were useless. It was William calling. I looked at the screen, smiled, and hung up. He called again. I hung up again. He did this dozens of times. He had to be on the verge of a nervous breakdown. His mother pressuring him, the lover threatening them, and the bank refusing to give him the money. His impotence and panic were the first punishment I was inflicting on a traitor. By the end of the afternoon, all the basic paperwork was ready. The account freeze order would be sent to the bank on Monday morning. Now I had another important matter to attend to, a play that needed its final act and a party I had to celebrate. I said goodbye to Mr. Caldwell and left his office feeling like a new woman. I was no longer the submissive, patient daughter-in-law, but an independent, confident woman ready to fight for her rights. This weekend was Charles's 65th birthday celebration, an event the Preston family had been planning for months, with invitations sent to all their extended family, friends, and former colleagues. They wanted to use the party to flaunt their status, to reaffirm their reputation as a model, happy, and united family. And I, as the eldest daughter-in-law, had been tasked with preparing a video slideshow of family photos to project on the big screen. Margaret had handed me hundreds of photos, asking me to make a spectacular moving video so everyone could see how happy the Preston family was and what a good daughter-in-law I was. I smiled. Of course, dear mother-in-law. You want a spectacular moving video. You want the world to see the truth about this family. I will grant your wish flawlessly. An unforgettable birthday party awaits you all. The weekend arrived faster than I expected. The atmosphere in the Preston estate had been as tense as a violin string, but masked by a frantic artificial hustle and bustle. William and Margaret, after their failed attempt to get the money, seemed sunk in a silent panic. William avoided my gaze coming home late, or locking himself in his study with excuses about work. Margaret tried to act normal, but the bags under her eyes and her jumps every time the phone rang gave away the terror consuming her. Tyler undoubtedly was still hounding her. I didn't know what excuses she'd given him. Maybe promising payment after the birthday party, or secretly fencing some jewelry. Whatever it was, I knew she was on the edge of the abyss. But today was Charles's big day, his 65th birthday party held at one of the most luxurious country clubs in the state. Nearly 200 guests, relatives, old military buddies, former colleagues from his days on the bench, and local socialites Margaret rubbed elbows with. The Preston family showed up in their finest attire. Charles, in an impeccable suit with a lapel pin, greeted guests with a radiant smile, living in his bubble of success and respect. Margaret, in a long ruby red velvet gown, embroidered with rhinestones, wearing heavy makeup to hide her haggard face, moved between tables, smiling and chatting perfectly, playing the role of the devoted wife and hostess of a happy family. Anyone looking at her would think Charles was the luckiest man alive to have such a perfect wife. William, in a gray suit, followed his parents, greeting people with mechanical gestures. He tried to look like a successful, respectful son, but his forced smile and empty eyes betrayed his inner cowardice. And I, wearing an elegant navy blue silk gown with my hair pinned up, played my role as the obedient daughter-in-law by William's side, smiling at the guests and listening to empty compliments about our model family. Valerie, you look gorgeous, a corporate director and so dedicated to your in-laws. Your husband's parents are so lucky, an aunt of William's told me. I just smiled and replied, you're too kind. Family peace is the most important thing. On the outside, my performance was as good as theirs, but on the inside, I felt nauseous at so much hypocrisy. The party began with a long speech by Charles, followed by a presentation from Margaret's philanthropic league. The ballroom filled with applause and laughter. I slipped discreetly toward the sound and lighting control booth. The AV tech, whom I had tipped generously beforehand, gave me a signal. Everything was ready. The USB drive with the special birthday video was already plugged into the laptop. And now, ladies and gentlemen, I invite you to direct your attention to the screens to relive the most memorable moments of the happy and united family of Mr. Charles Preston, a small gift from his children and grandchildren, the MC announced. Charles, Margaret, and William stepped onto the stage beaming, waiting for the applause. Margaret even shot me a conspiratorial smile, a smile with which she thought she was proving her control over me. The lights dimmed. The first few seconds of the video showed exactly what Margaret expected: old photos, William as a little boy, family vacations, all set to soft background music. Charles smiled proudly, wiping away a fake tear of emotion. The guests murmured praises. But suddenly the music cut out with a screech. The screen went black and then lit up again with a completely different image. A screenshot of a WhatsApp message. Baby, tomorrow the old man is going to play poker all day and the girl is working. Come to the estate, I miss you so much. Okay, babe. Listen, I'm a little short this month. Think you could help me out with a couple grand, no problem. You take good care of me tomorrow and I'll wire the transfer. A dead silence took over the ballroom. Hundreds of people, guests, relatives, and staff stared at the screen with their jaws on the floor. Murmurs began to break out. On stage, Charles's smile froze. His face went from flushed to ash gray. William stepped back, desperately scanning the room for me, but the worst reaction was Margaret's. She stood petrified, trembling. Her clutch dropped to the floor, her face twisted in horror, seeing the messages she herself had written. Turn it off, right now. Who put this trash up? She screamed, running toward the control booth, but her shaking legs caused her to trip and fall flat on her face on the stage. The video didn't stop. It showed the bank statements with wire transfers of hundreds and thousands of dollars from Margaret Preston's Chase account to Tyler Jenkins with memo lines like, "Little gift for my king," or "For your new motorcycle." Then came the luxury hotel invoices in her name, matching the dates of her spiritual retreats. And the coup de grace, the security camera footage from the living room, showing her begging Tyler not to leak her intimate photos, and the conversation with William where she incited him to steal the money from our joint savings account. Her shrill, shameless voice echoed throughout the ballroom, destroying any remaining shred of decency. The ballroom erupted, insults, looks of pure disgust, cell phones recording the spectacle. Charles, the man who lived for his reputation, clutched his chest, gasping for air. He looked at his wife, at his cowardly son, and at the hundreds of faces staring at him with disdain. The humiliation was too much for him. He swayed and collapsed onto the stage, unconscious. Screams, calls for an ambulance, Margaret's wailing. It all blurred into a tragic chaos. From the shadows, I watched the fall of the Preston family with an unsettling calm. The curtain had dropped. The hammer had fallen, smashing their castle of lies to pieces. They wanted honor, and I gave them a public humiliation. They wanted money, and I would give them ruin and a future of litigation. In this game, the only winner was me. The luxurious country club ballroom had turned into bedlam. The roar of conversations, people shouting for an ambulance, the clatter of dropped glasses, and Margaret's inconsolable wailing created a dantesque scene. Margaret, the powerful woman who always walked with her head held high, was now crawling across the stage. She was hugging an unconscious Charles, her face a mask of smeared makeup and tears, screaming, "Charles, wake up, please, somebody help my husband." But she only received cold, disgusted stares. The women from her philanthropic league who used to fawn over her were now whispering in a corner. What a disgrace, using her family's money to pay a gigolo. Tomorrow morning, I'm demanding her resignation as president. The relatives shook their heads. Some even insulted her out loud. My husband William stood paralyzed in the middle of the stage, as pale as a corpse. The video of him agreeing to steal my money to save his mother had pulverized his image as a successful, upstanding man. "William, you useless boy, call an ambulance," Margaret screamed at him. He clumsily pulled out his phone, and it dropped to the floor. In the midst of that chaos, I stepped out of the shadows and walked onto the stage. My steps were slow, firm. My absolute calm contrasted brutally with the Prestons' tragedy. All eyes turned to me. With a mix of curiosity and fear, they realized that the architect of that spectacle was me, the apparently submissive daughter-in-law. I approached William. I looked at him with sharp eyes. I picked up his phone and handed it to him. "Call an ambulance," I told him in a voice that was soft but icy. "Your father needs a doctor, not your cowardice." Seeing me, Margaret lunged at me with bloodshot eyes, screaming, "You bitch, you viper, you destroyed my family, I'm going to kill you." I didn't step back. I pushed her away with a firm gesture that sent her sprawling to the floor. "Margaret," I said in a clear voice so everyone could hear, "I didn't set a trap for you. I only showed the truth. Are those messages fake? Those bank transfers, those hotel bills? Did I force that man into your armoire? You disgraced yourself and destroyed your family. Now you expect to blame me." I turned toward the guests. "You are educated people. Look at this honorable family you admire so much. A mother-in-law who preaches morality while using her daughter-in-law's and husband's money to keep a lover. A cowardly husband who conspires with his mother to steal money meant for his future child. Tell me, could you live in this hell of hypocrisy?" My words cut deep. People nodded their gazes toward Margaret and William, now filled entirely with contempt. "You want to kill us," Margaret sobbed, pounding the floor. "I don't want to kill anyone. I'm just defending myself," I replied coldly. "You thought you could trample all over me without consequences. You thought your cowardly son could steal from me and get away with it. You were wrong. My patience has a limit, and when you cross it, you must face the consequences." The siren of the ambulance wailed outside. The paramedics rushed in and loaded Charles onto a stretcher. Margaret and William ran after them, leaving behind a disaster area and hundreds of inquiring stares. Before William walked out the doors, I yelled to him, "William, keep your phone on. On Monday, my lawyer will send the divorce papers to your office. Don't try to run. You have nowhere to hide." He stopped, looked at me with desperation and fear, and walked away, dragging his feet like a condemned man. I stood in the middle of the ballroom. I bowed slightly to the stunned guests. "I apologize for the disruption. The dinner bill has been paid. Please continue. If you'll excuse me, I will take my leave." I walked out with my head held high. My heels no longer sounded like submission, but like freedom. When I reached my car, I called my lawyer. "Mr. Caldwell, the curtain has fallen. Everything went exactly according to plan. Well done, Valerie. The account freeze order is in effect. On Monday, we file the lawsuit and the embezzlement charges against Margaret." "Thank you, Mr. Caldwell. But it's not enough. I want to withdraw my entire investment from William's company. Without my capital, and with this reputation, he'll sink in a month. I want them to taste what it's like to lose everything from their honor to their money. Sometimes the cruelest punishment isn't a strike, but snatching away from the enemy everything they believed was theirs. I support your decision. We'll get to work on it Monday." I hung up and leaned back in the seat, feeling an immense peace. The hurricane I had unleashed would wipe away all the lies and rot from their lives. On Monday, an autumn rain washed the streets of Boston. Unlike the chaos in the hospital where Charles was admitted or the panic in the Preston estate, my office was a haven of calm and professionalism. Dressed in a tailored gray suit, hair pulled back, lips painted a deep red, my appearance radiated an unbreakable coldness. Today was the day of the law, of clear numbers, and of final judgment. At exactly 9 a.m., William burst into my office. The neat, elegant man I knew had vanished. He was wearing the same wrinkled suit from the party, his eyes bloodshot from lack of sleep, smelling of the hospital and desperation. He didn't come alone. He was accompanied by a nervous-looking attorney. I didn't stand up. I remained seated, my hands clasped over the glass desk, my sharp gaze scanning the face of my soon-to-be ex-husband. Beside me was Mr. Caldwell with a thick stack of stamped documents. "Valerie, what is the meaning of this? My father just got out of the ICU. My mother is having a nervous breakdown at home, and you summoned me to your office. How far do you plan to take this?" "Sit down, William. We are not here to discuss family drama. We are here to liquidate the consequences of your and your mother's greed and baseness. Mr. Caldwell, please proceed." "Mr. Preston, I am the legal representative for Miss Valerie. Before you are two dossiers. The first is the unilateral divorce petition. It specifies that the fault lies entirely with you for a severe breach of marital duties, specifically your conspiracy with your mother to embezzle marital assets. Divorce. Are you crazy, Valerie? Over a misunderstanding with my mother? Do you think it's that easy? My company is my dream. You won't take a single cent. William, are you still living in a fantasy? Do you think your company survived? Because of you, Mr. Caldwell, show him the financial report. Mr. Preston, in the second dossier, is a detailed financial analysis. When you went broke, it was Miss Valerie who invested $1,500,000 of her personal premarital assets into your firm, representing 75% of the shares. All the major projects you've landed have been thanks to her contacts and her backing. Without my money, without my contacts, you and your honorable family would have been out on the street 3 years ago. You've used my money to live large, to pay off lovers. And now that the faucet is turning off, what do you have left? What are you going to do?" I asked, leaning forward. "Enforce the contract. This morning, I requested the withdrawal of my $1,500,000 investment. Your company's accounts have been frozen due to a shareholder dispute, and the partners I introduced to you have severed ties with you. Your company at this very moment is an empty shell drowning in debt. You can't do that. The company will go under. You're ruining me. You are a cruel, ruthless woman. Cruel, and when you conspired with your mother to steal the money meant for our future child to pay off a gigolo, you weren't cruel. And when you accused me of bringing a stranger into the house to save your mother's reputation, you weren't ruthless. I am only taking back what is mine. Sign the divorce. Accept walking away with nothing, and I will leave you the corpse of your company so you can deal with the debts yourself. If you refuse, I will sue you for fraud and embezzlement." "Mr. Preston," my lawyer interjected, "I advise you to think about it. The evidence of your attempted theft has been notarized. If we go to trial, not only will you lose everything, but you could face criminal charges. Signing is your only way out. William looked at the papers, his hands shaking, sweat beading on his forehead. Cowardice overtook him once again. He feared jail. He feared the debts. His fantasy of power had shattered into pieces. He picked up the pen and with a trembling stroke signed his surrender. He threw it on the desk, stood up, and looked at me with impotent hatred. "You'll regret this. My family won't forgive you. I'm looking forward to seeing what your father does to save his rotten family. Now go sort out your company's affairs. The bank starts collecting debts this afternoon. Goodbye, ex-husband." William left his hunched figure that of a destroyed man. I leaned back in my chair, breathing in the smell of coffee and freedom. The first battle, the legal and financial one, was won. I knew that the revenge of a man like Charles, a former federal judge wounded in his pride, would be cruel and ruthless. But I was ready for it. The day I walked out of the courthouse with the final divorce decree in my hand wasn't a sad day, but a rebirth. Looking back from the submissive woman who endured everything to maintain a fake family peace, to the one who used the law to destroy a farce, I realized one truth: no one can hurt you if you don't let them. Blind patience is not a virtue in a toxic relationship. It only feeds the greed and selfishness of others. That incident with the mahogany armoire shattered my illusions and showed me that the morality some people preach is just a mask for their vices. Margaret, Charles, William, they didn't represent a family. They represented internal rot. But I don't hate them. I am grateful to them. Their cruelty woke the sleeping lion inside of me. The most valuable lesson I want to share, especially with other women, is this: never sacrifice your independence for a fake peace. In today's world, a woman's worth is tied to her ability to sustain herself financially and emotionally. The money you earn with your effort is your voice and your armor. If I hadn't been independent, if I hadn't known my rights today, I would be a ruined, defamed woman. We are taught to be self-sacrificing, to be patient. But sacrifice only makes sense if it's given to someone who values it. Facing people who use you tolerance is suicide. Do not hesitate to use the law to protect yourselves. Gather evidence, record conversations, get a lawyer. It's not cruelty, it's self-defense. Being good does not mean being weak, and being compassionate does not mean letting people trample your dignity. The road was hard, but mental clarity and respect for the law allowed me to turn the tables on the game. They dug their own graves with their greed and lies. Now, from the penthouse of my new luxury apartment, I look out over the city and breathe the air of freedom. Peace isn't something that's given to you. It's something you build, something you earn by fighting through the storm. The past is a closed chapter. The future is bright and wide open. I have learned to love myself, to set boundaries, and to never yield to malice. Every one of us is the director of our own life. Don't let anyone force a dark, tear-filled script onto you. If life gives you lemons, use your intelligence and strength to make the best lemonade. I hope my story has inspired you and made you reflect on your own worth and on the strength that resides within every woman.